First of all, I want all of you to put your hands together for this wonderful man. For somebody to devote their entire life to benefit others is a very noble task. So Chandra, I bow to you. It's simply amazing. And I'm very grateful to your father because there was an unfinished business that you then completed. I have read this book. I feel deeply inspired, and I just wish that you were a lot older at the time, written this book years ago when I had to do a few shifts in my life. And I know what it is not to have a job. Feeling very insecure. Those days, when you didn't have a job, for whatever reason, when you didn't have a job and your child asks you, Dad, are you not going to work? And you have to tell the child, I'm on leave, beta. You can do that for the first month. You can do that for the second month. But then the children figure out that there's something missing around you. In the good old days, we didn't have anything called work from home because today I could pretend to work from home and not have a job. But back to the subject which is to hand, I think if we all have that deep desire to do something different, we can. Every one of us sitting in this room, we have always aspired to do something and then did something completely different. I'll share two things with you today. I wanted to be an engineer. Core of heart, all I wanted to do is be an engineer. Studied very hard. Unfortunately, we had to keep traveling every 2-3 years because that's where Dad took us. And I was in Nagpur. In Nagpur, I studied really, really hard, learned Marathi, even did my exams in Marathi, and finally got the results. Results were very good. Unfortunately, my dad said, we got to move again. And he moved to Madras, Chennai now. And at that time, I was struggling because I wanted to get into an engineering college. I had the marks for it. Dad said, sorry, I don't have the money for it. Madras engineering colleges, they all said, sorry, we can't take you on. And the only reason we can't take you is that the Maharashtra quota is over. You can come next year. I can promise you we'll give you an admission. My brother was 1 year my junior, so ego got in the way. So I can't have my brother and I both doing engineering. And I knew that he would get into engineering. Anyways, what did I do? I went from place to place, college to college. I went to Loyola. I went to Vivekananda. I went to some colleges in Madras. All of them said, sorry, no seat, no seat. And I was getting very nervous. And finally, at the time when I was absolutely full on, I was just exiting, the professor of mathematics called me and said, gentlemen, would you want to do mathematics? I wanted to do economics or English, but not mathematics. And I was telling my father, no, I don't want to do mathematics. My father said, take it, because there's nothing. Take it. I didn't like mathematics. How many of you in this room don't like mathematics? Raise your hands. Thank you very much. I'm one of you. I didn't like mathematics. Did I do well in mathematics? Well enough to be the best outgoing student of Vivekananda College. I think I learned something that day. I learned if you don't get what you like what you get. And then make a meal of it. I mean, do really well. So that was the first thing that happened. And then, of course, my journeys took me to this thing. I wanted to be a CEO someday. and said I must get into business management. But my own uncle, was a trade union leader. And I said, I must learn something about this trade unionism, enough to talk to him and tell him that you don't need to be a militant trade union leader, which he was. Anyways, my journeys took me to different parts of the countries and so on. And I didn't get to do engineering. I ultimately went into human resources, where I stayed for a long, long time. And then my paths took me here and there. And ultimately, I did get to the position of a CEO, but the paths were very different. There was one person in my journey, of course, there are several persons in my journey who I would always remember. And if you'll humor me, one story? Sure? Okay. So this is the story of, I was then in Sterling Holiday Resorts. Sterling Holiday Resorts, I wanted to get into an Indian company. I was in a British company. I learned how to hold a fork and knife. I know how to hold a drink. And I know how to converse, all of which I got taught for the first 12 years of my life. And I was feeling very smug about it, till one day, something happened. I was asked to let go of 100 people in the organization, which had just 400 people. It was a very small plant in Madras. I did that very well. I did that really well. Voluntary retirement scheme, VRS. A lot of people took that. I made sure that all the 100 people, I kept in touch with them. And I got in touch with a lot of my other friends in the industry and made sure that all of them at least found a foot in the door for some organizations, many of them who got placed, etc. When I went up to my boss on the 3rd of May, as I remember, my boss said, "You've done exceedingly well, Nathan, and here is an astounding increment for you." And he gave me a letter. He says, "I got the best increment that the company can give you." I said, "Thank you very much," but I was broken. I went back to my desk. I wrote out a letter which said, "Thank you very much, but no thank you." And I went and tendered my resignation, because I just felt that it's easy for us to say, "You've done a good job letting go of people." But how about creating jobs? People were not ready. The good news is all those 100 people, they did well. Some of them became CEOs, some of them became CFOs, and so on. But that taught me a lesson that anything can happen anytime. And we didn't have this wonderful book in those days, Chandra, but we learned our life lessons. One of which is, we must learn how to fail. We must know how to fail. I'm always in amazement of people who are sports persons, people who play. So I always take it that if I have to hire somebody, I always ask this question, do you play any sport? Because when you play a sport, you know how to win. You know you could also lose. It could be a team game, or it could be an individual accomplishment. But in all this, you know how to fail. Anyways, so I was in Sterling Holiday Resorts. I've been to a place called Kodi. And in Kodi, there's a very nice lake. It was pretty late in the evening. At about 10 o'clock, I was thinking that I think I should retire to bed. But then there was somebody else who said, and they kept me company. Anyway, one thing led to another. Around 12 o'clock at night, there was somebody, rather inebriated, who came rushing, and he says, "My car is in the lake. Can you save my car? Can you save my car? My car is in the lake." Drunk. So the lady who was there at the reception, she said, "Sir, don't you worry. Have you got the keys?" He says, "I got the keys." And anyway, the keys were deposited. Anyway, so this guy was escorted to his room, and this lady didn't know what to do. But she saw in the far corner, there was a light on, and that was at the gymnasium. And she went up and called the gym instructor and said, "Hey, can you help? Because this car is in the river, is in the lake." So he said, "Yeah, of course I can." Immediately he went straight to the kitchen. Why go to the kitchen? Because somewhere near the kitchen you will find a lot of people who would be tired and they don't care where they sleep, but they'll be all hanging around in one place. So he caught hold of about 5-10 people, went to the lake. Fortunately, it was not in the middle of the lake or something. It was possibly about 3-4 feet into the lake, but it was submerged. They managed to get the car out, and the car went straight to the garage. The gym instructor woke up people in the garage. They worked on it the whole night, and the car was in fine fettle the following morning, and they took the car keys and they went right up to this guest, and he says, okay, here's your morning cup of coffee and of course your car keys. Your car is absolutely fine, thank you very much. There's a small bill, but then we'll add that to your room. And that was the end of it. I came to know about this because I heard something that night, but then something happened. Next day morning, I met this gentleman, and I asked him, I said, what made you do it? So he says, because I just felt I had to do it. There was nobody else. Anyways, that evening, I got a lot of my colleagues, and I said, hey, we must do something for this gentleman. I wrote out a check for rupees 2,000. In those days, this is equivalent to, let's say, 25 or 30,000 rupees. It's a big, big sum of money. And I gave it to him, and I said, this is for you. He took that, he saw it, of course he was pleased, he put it back in his pocket, and then I went and hugged him, and he breathed into my ear, says, sir, this is not sufficient. This is not sufficient, this is insufficient. I said, well, we'll talk about this. Evening was over. I said, why don't you come and see me next day early morning? So I was in the office. He comes in and he says, sir, this is insufficient. So I said, please explain yourself. He says, sir, I don't want to be a gym instructor. I don't want to be a gym instructor all my life. So what do you want to do? He says, I want to be in human resources. Now, how was I to tell him that you need a body of education under your belt before you can even become a human resource specialist? But I liked something in him which I find people with a lot of degrees possibly could be more endowed with, which is attitude. And I found that very endearing. So I said, okay, come and join the team. And of course, my colleagues and all that, they said, no, why are you doing this? He's after all a gym instructor. I said, don't bother. Just take him on. He has something that you and I don't have sufficiently. So let's take him on. So he came on. Fast forward, he went from one company to another. And all that he kept asking me every time we met was, how can I be better? How can I do this? How can I do that? 2 weeks ago, I got a call from somebody and said, sir, I need your counsel. I have a choice of getting on to this particular organization or a choice of getting into this organization as the president of human resources. And so, can you help me make my choice? Now, when people ask you this kind of question, it's not like you have to respond to it. You have to just engage them in a conversation. They'll find their own answers. And which is what he did. And he thanked me profusely. And I kept smiling. And I kept the phone somewhere far away from reach. And my wife looked at me and she noticed I was smiling. I don't know about your spouses, but my spouse is very inquisitive. If I'm smiling, she'll always want to know what's wrong. So she comes up and she says, hey, you're smiling. What was the reason for your smile? So I said, well, this person, he is joining a $2 billion company as the president of human resources. And so he has asked me whether I should join this company or that company. And I said, but why are you smiling? So I said, I'm smiling because once upon a time, Venkatesh was all but a gym instructor, I just clapped because I wanted that story to end. There are a lot of Venkateshas in our midst. Maybe some of us sitting here. The one thing that we don't know is how powerful we are, what kind of strengths we have. And it requires somebody to come and tell you what your strengths are. I was fortunate. I mean, I've got a number of stories of the people in my journey who've managed to do something spectacular. And I believe that every Hanuman needs a Jambavan. Somebody to stoke the interest in a person. Let the person know this is what you're really good at and keep. Because over a period of time, all that you develop is confidence. And you referred to that very early. So on that note, let me just stop here. I'm here, I just bought my notebook and I said, I'm going to learn something today. That's what I wish to do. Fantastic book. Fantastic book. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much.